We've got 5 things that I don't want to see the New York Giants do or not do during the draft. What are they? That's coming up next on the LockedOn Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina. Happy Monday to everybody. We're starting a new week, the NFL draft, less than 3 weeks away. How exciting is this, folks? I mean, it is getting so much closer. And listen, I want to thank you all for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first listen of the day, or if you're watching us on YouTube, your first watch of the day. And today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you in part by BetOnline. BetOnline.net has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And on today's Locked On Giants podcast, everybody, I want to talk about 5 things that I don't want to see, or maybe I do want to see for the draft. Basically, a checklist of things that, for me, if the Giants accomplish them, or don't accomplish them in some cases, they will have had the perfect draft coming up in 3 weeks. So I've got 5 things we're going to talk about over the course of the podcast. You let me know if you agree or disagree with my list. And before I jump into the list, just a quick shout out to everybody. Want to thank y'all. I just got notification a few days ago that the Locked On Giants podcast on YouTube has surpassed over 250,000 views. That's just amazing. I never in my wildest dreams thought I would do that kind of traffic on YouTube. And for someone who is so afraid to get on YouTube, I am so glad to be here, as I am glad to be on all the audio platforms. And, thanks to everybody for making the Locked On Giants podcast one of the fastest growing and most listened to podcasts in the Locked On network. Really appreciate y'all, and will continue to do my best to bring you the best possible content here on the Locked On Giants podcast. All right, let's cut out the jibber jabber. Let's get into what I consider some remote throwers, things that if they happen, I'm going to be kind of disappointed. If they don't happen, I might be disappointed. Basically, 5 things that the Giants either want to have happen or don't want to have happen to have the perfect draft coming up in a couple weeks. So let's kick it off. Item number 1 on the list. This is something that if I were watching the draft on TV, and now that I think about it, even though I will be probably in the not the MetLife Stadium, I'm sorry, the Giants media workroom for the draft weekend, watching the actual draft on TV as well as on my laptop, this would be something, this first item on my list, if it happened, would definitely be something that would make me throw the remote through the TV screen. And that is, if the Giants came out of the first round not having drafted an offensive tackle. Now, why would I even suggest such a silly thing, right? I mean, you probably say, Pat, come on, why would you even think that? Well, Pro Football Focus, in their latest 2-round mock draft, and I did an article on this, by the way, over on Giants Country, actually suggested this scenario. And what was interesting about it is that all 3 of the big 3 offensive tackles, Charles Cross, Evan Neal, and Ikwanu, were all on the board when the Giants were on the clock at 5. But yet, Pro Football Focus, Anthony Tresh, who wrote the article, said, nope, not picking an offensive tackle. And I read that and I was like, what? Why would you not pick an offensive tackle? Now, listen, every year the Giants, every NFL team for that matter, they throw a monkey wrench into what they do. We expect one thing. They have a totally different perspective how they're going to do stuff, and they go and they do things a little differently. So they throw the proverbial monkey wrench into the pot, if you will. But for me, my gosh, if the Giants don't come out of this draft with at least one of those 3 offensive tackles, I'm going to be pretty, upset by that, Because, look, you look at how the Giants have set up the draft using free agency, and I have a feeling Joe Shane, when he speaks to the media on, I think it's April 21st, that he's speaking to the media, he's probably going to say that they don't use free agency necessarily to set up the draft. Okay, fine, but still, the fact remains is the Giants signed a bunch of interior offensive linemen to play on, most of whom are going to play on one-year contracts, the exception being Mark Lewinsky, who signed a multi-year contract. All right, that's all well and good. But for offensive tackle, okay, you've got Andrew Thomas at left tackle, and right now you have either Matt Ono or Corey Cunningham competing for the right tackle spot. I'm sorry, no disrespect to those two young men, but I happen to think that one of these picks in the draft, Cross, Ekwonu, or Neal, would be an upgrade. Okay, so for me, if the Giants aren't coming away with one of those three, and by the way, I don't think, now again, you don't know, so if I were placing bets on this with, say for example, BetOnline, one of our sponsors here on the LockedOn Giants podcast, if I were to bet that one of those three wouldn't be available, I don't know. I'm going to bet that one of those three will be available. Let's put it to you that way. Now, what kind of grade do the Giants have on them? That's a whole different scenario. That's a whole different story. I'm not sitting here and saying that the Giants, their top three picks on their board are, all three tackles. They might have a higher grade on, say, for example, Evan Neal as opposed to Ekwonu and Charles Cross. Maybe they say, you know what, Charles Cross, for example, doesn't fit what we want to do. And if we don't get Evan Neal, then we're not taking an offensive tackle. But, for my money here, I want the Giants to come away with a starting right tackle. They are one piece away, I think, from really upgrading that offensive line. And in a year where they have to find out what they have with Daniel Jones, don't mess around. Don't get cute. Get an offensive tackle. Now, you're probably sitting there saying, well, if they don't get an offensive tackle, they could always go and get one in round 2 or, round 3. Yeah, they could. But I think of those big 3, they're all plug and plays. So I want to see one of those 3 as a Giant, and I would be really disappointed if the Giants don't make that move. So yeah, that's a definite remote thrower for me. All right, up next, speaking of round 1, this thing I think would disappoint me, although I wouldn't be completely heartbroken. I don't think I would throw the remote if this did not happen, but I kind of would like to see it happen, and that is for the Giants to trade down in round 1. All right, so at pick number 5, I'm saying get the offensive tackle. At pick number 7, if by then, the top edge rushers are off the board, which I think they will be, trade the pick down. I don't want to see them reach for a linebacker, for example. As good as Nakobe Dean is, I don't know that I'd want to see them pick him at 7. I don't think I'd want to see them pick a safety at 7. I'm not sure if Sauce Gardner will be on the board at that point. He might be gone. Just if you can pick up an extra first-round pick next year, do it. If you don't come away with an extra first-round pick in 2023, here, let me lay out the scenario for you, all right? 5 teams, all of whom will potentially need quarterbacks next year, have 2 picks apiece. Those 5 teams include Seattle, Philadelphia, Houston, Miami, and Detroit. All right? The Giants, listen, fingers crossed that Daniel Jones works out. Let's hope that the Giants don't have to worry about quarterback after this year. But if in the event they do, you better have an extra first-round pick. And the only way you're going to get that extra first-round pick, in my opinion, is if you trade one of your first-round picks now and you trade down. So I'd like to see the Giants come away with an extra first-round pick in 2023. And the way to do that is to trade the way I think to do that is to trade one of their first round picks, ideally the 7th one. I'm not, I don't know that I would play with number 5. The only way I would consider playing with number 5 is if I had equal grades on all 3 of the offensive tackles, and all 3 of the tackles were on the board at by the time I went on the clock at round 5. This way, I would be assured of getting one at 7. But those two things I think kind of run together. And look, I want the Giants to have 2 first-round picks in 2023. I know people are saying, look, let's worry about 2022, and you wouldn't be wrong by saying that. But you've got to prepare if you're the Giants. If Daniel Jones proves not to be your guy, and you do not have a first-round pick, an extra first-round pick next year to where maybe you've got to move up, guess what? You probably aren't getting a blue chipper type of quarterback. So, yeah, I'd like to see the Giants pick up that extra pick, and I think the way to do it is if they trade down. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, no matter what sport you're into, BetOnline.net has all your odds, information, props, everything you need to make your wagers wisely. BetOnline.net is the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. Whether it's basketball, baseball, hockey, you name it. They even cover Vegas games. So check them out today, BetOnline.net, and see all the trends and actions they have for you. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the LockedOn Giants podcast. My name is Patricia Traina, and I'm outlining some things that I either don't want to see or want to see over draft weekend that I think will make for a perfect Giants draft. As far as I'm concerned, you might agree, you might disagree. That's up to you. As always, you're welcome to send in your comments, your questions, and whatnot. And, speaking of the draft, starting on April 18th, the LockedOn Network is running its Ultra mock draft. So every one of us at the LockedOn NFL Network, representing our teams, we all had to make picks in the mock draft. We all had to shoot videos explaining why we made the pick and who we picked and all that good stuff. And I, of course, made 2 picks for the Giants at 5 and 7 because I just could not find a trade partner for number 7, even though I even threw in my supply of Built Bars and nobody was taking it. I don't know. I mean, I guess I should have thrown in, what could I have thrown in? My microphone, my camera. I don't know. I don't know what would have gotten my colleagues to move, but nobody took me up on an offer to trade down. So, unfortunately, I picked 5 and 7, which I know goes against what I just said about having the perfect draft, but hey, that's why they call it a mock draft. So mock away. Again, that's going to start April 18th. We hope you enjoy that, and we hope you will check it out. It'll be available on YouTube as well as wherever you find your podcasts. All right, continuing on now with my list of things that I either want to see or don't want to see in order to have a quote-unquote perfect Giants draft weekend. I do not want to see the Giants drafting a linebacker in the top 7. And by linebacker, I'm talking inside linebacker, not an edge rusher. All right, if they draft an edge rusher who happens to be an outside linebacker, defensive end, I'm fine with that. I don't want an inside linebacker. And the reason why I bring this up is because Pro Football Focus, again, in their mock draft, had the Giants taking an inside linebacker at 7. And, this is what's kind of interesting to me. I'm not saying that the Giants don't need an inside linebacker. I think they should look to get someone. Blake Martinez is coming off of the torn ACL. His contract is coming up to its conclusion. Tate Crowder is still under contract, but, he's been okay, but I think they can upgrade the spot. So if you can get a good off-ball linebacker for the future, why not? Just not on day 1. Please don't do it on day 1. Maybe look day 2. Leo Chanel is a guy that, when I've been running my mock draft simulations, he keeps popping up and I keep grabbing him for a spot, for the second round. So I think the Giants will probably not take a linebacker, an inside linebacker, with their first 2 picks in the first round. But again, you never know. Their big board might be great. Not might be, probably is arranged a little differently than the big boards that I've been using and creating. So let's just hope, though, they don't, again, for me, the picks, if they're going to stay at 5 and 7, offensive tackle, obviously. Obviously, you're going to want, if you can get it, an edge rusher. If you can't get a solid edge rusher, a cornerback would be a must. I don't know that I would take a safety. To me, a safety, I would probably wait till day 2, maybe early day 3, depending on who's on the board. But I just don't want to see a scenario where they're taking an inside linebacker, even one who's good in coverage as well as, against the run. I just don't want to see that in the first round. All right. Another thing that I do not want to see, and I don't think this next thing is going to happen at all. I'd be stunned if this happens. I don't want to see the Giants pick up a 7th round draft pick this year. Now, I'm saying this kind of selfishly because here's the thing. I cover the draft every year. I'm running to pressers and jumping on conference calls and stuff like that. And I remember one year the Giants had like 3 picks in the 7th round, and that was just torture for me. It was like, gosh, why couldn't the Giants trade those picks away so that you didn't have them back to back? Because in our business, it's all about, picking these, getting stuff out as quickly as you can while making sure, obviously, that you're accurate. So, yeah, that's a little bit of a selfish reason for me. But seriously, folks, I don't think the Giants will get back into the 7th round. I mean, you never know. They might. But to me, you have such a low percentage of hitting on a 7th round pick that I would just, if the Giants are going to make trades, I would love to see them package up like their 6th rounders and whatnot and see if they can move those, move up that way if they need to move up. In other words, the faster we get done with the draft, the better. And also, the higher the draft picks, the better the chances that they will stick around on the roster and not be developmental players. Now, I do think the Giants are going to pick up some developmental players, but please, not in the 7th round. And if they can get out of the 6th round, even better. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, but without the calories and without the sugar. Most Built Bars contain about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein, and they taste great. Built Bar offers 9 amazing flavors in nut and nut-free varieties, plus a rotating limited-time offering of different flavors that changes up every so many weeks. Head on over to BuiltBar.com today to see what their current flavor lineup looks like, and use our special promo code LOCKED15 to save 15% off your first order. Again, that's code LOCKED15, LOCKED15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the LockedOn Giants podcast. My name is Patricia Trey, and I thank you so much for tuning in here on the LockedOn Giants podcast. And just a quick reminder, everybody, Twitter Tuesday is tomorrow. I know we had Twitter Thursday last week. A lot of you checked in with me on YouTube. You said you liked the new graphics package, so I will keep that. Based on the questions I get. So you know what to do. The information's in the show notes. Even if you're listening here on the audio platforms, please get your questions in. If you have them to me by 7 o'clock on Monday, I should be able to get them into Tuesday's show. So whether you email them, whether you phone them in, whether you tweet them to me, however you want to do it, please get those questions in. Make sure if you're tweeting them, you tag them, Ask P-Train, so this way I can find them quickly. They'll pop up on my screen. All right, also coming up on the LockedOn Giants podcast this week, I'm working to get at least one guest, possibly 2. Once I have details, I'll let you guys know. I'll clue you in on who's who. But always looking to get you, the best possible content I can as we count down to the draft. I mean, we're all about the draft right now. So, we're going to focus on that. And then at some point I might do a final 6th round actually, but I might do a final Giants only mock draft. Just my picks now, because I haven't really done that yet, either here on the podcast or on Giants Country. So that might be something I'll throw in, but we've got time for that. So now let's get back to things that, if they happen or don't happen, will influence my opinion of the Giants draft. So this next thing is something I do not want to see. This to me would be a remote thrower for me. And that would be if the Giants drafted a punter or a quarterback in this draft. What? Yeah, you heard right. A punter or a quarterback. Now, why would I suggest a punter? Well, the Giants signed Jamie Gillian. They guaranteed him $100,000. Okay, cool. But there's I think it's the San Diego State punter whose name, I apologize, his name escapes me at the moment, but he's a draftable guy. And some people have said to me, well, why don't the Giants just grab him? Because, they've got 9 picks, they can flip the field, etc. You know what? Get a punter, in free agency if you have to. Get an older punter, get a guy, an undrafted free agent. Don't waste a draft pick on a punter. To me, I know years ago the Giants did that. They drafted Brad Maynard, and he worked out okay for them. Then they spent a draft pick, I think it was a 7th round pick, on Matt Dodge. He did not work out for them. You could pick up a punter off the waiver wire. You could pick up a punter, like I said, an undrafted free agent. Don't mess with that. Don't waste a spot when you have so many spots you have to fill. All right, now quarterback. Why am I saying don't pick up a quarterback? Here's my thinking here. I do think that Brian Daboll is going to want to add another young quarterback, maybe on the practice squad. But as I see it, I think unless there's an injury or something funky happens, the Giants depth chart at quarterback is going to be Daniel Jones is their starter, Tyrod Taylor is the backup, and Davis Webb, folks, is going to be on this roster. I'd be very surprised if he's not. And the reason why I say that is because Davis Webb, coming from Buffalo, can help with, teaching Daboll's system. He's a very smart player, a guy who is almost like a coach. So I would be very surprised if Davis Webb is not on this roster. I don't think he's going to leapfrog over Tyrod Taylor, but I could see the Giants keeping him. Now, would the Giants add another quarterback on the practice squad? I'd have no problem with that. I just don't want that guy drafted. Again, you have so many needs on this team. Why spend a draft pick on a quarterback? If you need to draft a quarterback next year, again, going back to what I said earlier, get an extra first round pick to where if you have to move up, you can do it and get yourself your franchise quarterback if Daniel Jones is not your guy. So, if the Giants pick up a developmental quarterback as an undrafted free agent, I have no problem with that. But I do not want to see them use a draft pick on a quarterback. That to me would kind of just be like a remote thrower. I don't care who the quarterback is, by the way. This class, I'm not particularly enthusiastic about this class. I think there's, there might be a couple guys who could be starters. But there's nobody here that, we're not talking any Patrick Mahomeses or Josh Allens or Joe Burrows or Justin Herberts. Nah, I don't want to see them use a pick on a quarterback. All right, the final thing I do not want to see the Giants do. I prefer not to see them do it. Again, this is subject to how it kind of plays out, but here's the thing. The Giants have 5 picks in the top 100. All right. I like that. If you get your picks in the top 100, you're generally going to come away with players who can contribute in some way, shape, or form, be it as a starter or be it as a role player. I would rather not see the Giants trade away any of those picks. Now, I understand there's the salary cap concerns. I get that. I think the Giants will be able to scrape together the money they need to sign the draft class. But I sure hope it doesn't come at the expense of the 5 picks they have in the top 100. Because, look, again, this team needs a lot, all right? Joe Schoen did what he could in free agency with limited funds. I get it. A lot of guys are signed to 1-year deals, which means that after this year, you're going to have to replenish or replace those guys. So to be trading away picks in the top 100, I wouldn't do it. I mean, now, could I see Shane doing that? If he wants to move up, he might have no choice but to do it. But I would really prefer that he not trade away any of those picks in the top 100. Use them on guys to, fill out your roster, guys that are going to be here for multiple years, and, that you can develop. Offensive lineman, for example, that's a perfect example, okay? Get a young offensive lineman, an interior offensive lineman that you can develop behind these veterans that all they sign. And I think that's what they might do. I mean, that makes the most sense, but, is that what they're going to do? Well, we'll just have to see, because here's the thing when it comes to the draft, folks. You just don't know how the board is going to fall. You could sit there and look, teams do mock drafts. They try to anticipate how the board might fall. Nobody gets it right. It just, there's always a monkey wrench that is thrown into the mix. And you have to have a plan A, B, or C. You can't panic, which some teams have been known to do. One of which was the Giants in recent years. So, yeah, I just hope that the Giants, at the end of the day, at the end of that weekend, I want to walk out of that media workroom feeling good about this draft class. And I know, look, they've got to get on the field. They have to play downs and all that good stuff. But I want to feel good about the talent. I want to feel good about the needs. If how many of the guys that they picked up satisfy a need on the roster. I just want to feel good that, there were no reaches and that they didn't do anything stupid or risky. And if that can happen, then heck, I'll be one happy camper. So, and I'm sure a lot of you guys and gals will be as well. So, all right, guys, that's going to do it for us here on the LockedOn Giants podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. Don't forget again, tomorrow is Twitter Tuesday. Get your questions into me by 7 o'clock on Monday, and I will pick up just about all that I can. Sometimes we get some duplicates, so I don't run the duplicates too often, but get the questions in, and I will take care of you. I got you covered. So thank you again for listening. Until next time, everybody, have a great one.